There's too much car in this car!
What the hell are you doing? Get the hell out of here! Every fucking morning with this guy.
Surprise!
Lately, everyone's talking about Instagram person Belle Delphine selling her dirty bathwater as gamer girl water for people to own for sentimental reasons. Now, anyone who buys that is an idiot, a fool. They've been duped. Not because they bought the dirty water in the first place, but because they missed the real bargain, a bottle of Jessica Nigri's Sick. Burritos and Gamer Girl bathwater? What have you been drinking? Recently, GameIndustry.biz published an article titled EA, I struggle with the perception we're just a bunch of bad guys. The headline quoting Electronic Arts' EVP of Strategic Growth, Matt Bilby. The article is a discussion with Bilby that attempts to frame EA as a misunderstood hero, at least in the eyes of independent developers. Behind the big blockbusters, writes Game Industry, EA is offering very friendly deals for indie developers. Let's go, EA! Rah, rah, rah! The argument in favour of EA, as presented by Bilby and replicated pretty much without question in the article, is that because EA supports a number of indie games, it's not really that bad of an egg. The EA Originals label, which signs on indie talent and has helped bring us games like A Way Out, Unravel, and Sea of Solitude, is indeed a pretty good deal for any talented studio, considering the entirety of the profit goes back to said studio. But when it comes to weighing this one act of financial generosity against the negative impact Electronic Arts has had on the industry, does one hand wash the other? Because EA has done a good thing, does that make it a good company? A positive influence? I realise that even framing it as a question on this show is just a little bit smarmy, considering we all know exactly what I think here. Just in case there was any doubt though, I think the best thing for the entire game industry would be for Electronic Arts to wither and die and have its head offices cleansed with exorcists and acid and flamethrowers and, like, one massive dog-sized spider that marches through and eats the Anthem source code. 25 years at EA and I still struggle with the external perception that we're just a bunch of bad guys, offers Bilby in a weak piece of corporate apologia. We love making and playing games. Unfortunately, when we make mistakes on games, the world knows about it because it's of a size and scale. Aside from the general flimsiness of the argument, I must say I take a very particular issue with this framing of EA's less savoury deeds as mistakes. This is not the first time an Electronic Arts mouthpiece has tried this particular line of bollocks. In fact, companies in general love to portray their shenanigans as mere mistakes, learning opportunities, and it's a total sham. In April of 2018, the company claimed that it made mistakes with Star Wars Battlefront 2, the game so dependent on gambling mechanics and unfun grinding progression for its monetization that it triggered an uproar leading to congressional interest in the whole practice of loot boxes. That's how bad it got. We can shy away from it and pretend like it didn't happen, grovelled former EA executive Patrick Soderlund, or we can act responsibly and realise realise that we
made some mistakes.
and try to rectify those
Mistakes.
and learn from them. Cool, but why didn't you already learn from those mistakes in the past? I mean, long before then, EA CEO Andrew Wilson admitted his company might have misjudged its approach to Dungeon Keeper Mobile, a free-to-wait game which demolished the very concept of the Dungeon Keeper series in order to aggressively coax money from players. Excavating a single block of space in the game could take up to 24 hours, and you bet your ass there was a premium currency you could spend in order to speed the whole process up. A fact that the game reminded you of at every opportunity. The game was so riddled with cheap psychological manipulation that harassed players for cash, even the BBC reported on it, and when the story got too hot, the robotic CEO of EA had to come around cap in hand to say that Electronic Arts misjudged its approach. For people who'd grown up playing Dungeon Keeper, there was a disconnect there. In that aspect, we didn't walk the line as well as we could have, and that's a shame, suggested Android Wilson. You have to deliver value, and always err on the side of delivering more value, not less! Whenever it gets caught out, humiliated, or strongly challenged enough, EA will fall back on claiming it was all a mistake. And here's the thing, they're not mistakes. Perhaps there was a mistake in getting caught, in feeling too confident that they'd get away with their bullshit, but the bullshit itself was perfectly planned and executed according to their designs. EA's not some drunk football fan pulling his pants down in public. It's not a bird smashing into a window because it can't see the glass. It's not a game studio giving Peter Molyneux a microphone. It's a multi-billion-dollar corporation run by many executives with years of experience who leave very little to chance. They research the market constantly and plan well in advance. And more to the point, exactly how many times does EA need to make the same mistake, vow to do better, and then fail to do better? Like in 2016 when it won that Worst Company in America award that everyone took too seriously. And again said they made mistakes, and again vowed to do better. The claims of making mistakes ring especially hollow when you remember that, despite admitting to its fuck-ups in the past, Electronic Arts is currently fighting a legal and political fight to keep loot boxes in the FIFA series, pathetically attempting to rebrand them as surprise mechanics in an attempt to dress up their patently shitty behaviour. FIFA's parasitic, addiction-fueled microtransactions are proof positive that none of this has been a mistake. They'll keep doing whatever they can get away with for as long as possible, only pretending it was all a mistake when they can no longer salvage any positive PR from it. That's what EA does. That's what corporations are fucking do. I'm not kidding when I say the entire argument in EA's favour here is the EA Originals label. Originals sees EA publish and promote new games from indie studios and give every penny of profit back to the developer, applauds the article. EA only takes enough money to cover its costs. It's a deal so good that Johnny Hopper of Glowmade exclaimed on stage that he couldn't believe the contract he had been sent. To these creators, EA isn't some supervillain, quite the opposite. I defy anyone, even people on the label, to consider EA a superhero. I mean, Jesus. But anyway, as I said, EA Originals is, objectively, an amazing deal, and I won't take that away from them. But let's juxtapose it against something else Electronic Arts does for smaller companies, shall we? Namely, how it buys up, strips down, and kills off almost every independent developer it can scoop up. EA is so habitual about this, I once famously coined the term Unichronic Arts to describe its destructive consumption of smaller companies. The list of EA's victims here is almost farcically long, and includes not just studios it bought out, but its own homegrown subsidiaries as well. Bullfrog Productions, Westwood Studios, Origin Systems, NewFX, Pandemic Studios, Playfish, Blackbox Games, Phenomic Game Development, Victory Games, Mythic Entertainment, Maxis Software, to name but some of them. One of its own children, Visceral Games, was shut down just last year, and many fear BioWare could be next because it follows the pattern. The pattern of a developer once beloved for something straying further and further away from the thing that made it beloved at the behest of its publisher, eventually slipping into critical duds right before the axe comes down on the neck. Many of the companies swallowed up by Unichronic Arts are known for particular types of game experiences that EA systematically directed them away from before making them produce so many disasters they got killed off as part of so-called restructuring. Mythic, for example, was responsible for the despicable Dungeon Keeper mobile shortly before it was ignobly executed. So, Electronic Arts will have to forgive me if I don't think EA Originals is a good enough reason to see the company as anything other than the predatory piece of shit it routinely acts like. If it looks like an exploitative, cynically motivated, money-hungry corporation and acts like an exploitative, cynically motivated, money-hungry corporation, then it probably is an exploitative, cynically motivated, money-hungry corporation. And Electronic Arts, in case you've not followed along, is an exploitative, cynically motivated, money-hungry corporation. And it's not like the EA Originals label is entirely altruistic. I mean, look how much they're mining it for PR. Just like with its addiction-fueled economies, the buying up and killing off of smaller companies isn't a mistake. EA didn't accidentally buy company after company, run them into the ground and kill them off. It's part of its business model. It's what EA does. It's what corporations are fucking do. In March, EA laid off 350 employees. In this past year, EA executives have seen their financial compensation raised by 130%. CEO Android Wilson earned some glowing little headlines for himself when he said in a recent interview that EA executives are generously surrendered their bonuses to distribute among the workforce. Though such headlines failed to note that the executives shouldn't have even been in line for bonuses following the company's poor financial results, and that Andrew Wilson's bold, brave decline of such a bonus on top of what he already earns was pretty much nothing to a man with a net worth of at least $125 million. EA will keep having rounds of layoffs as part of restructuring while its executives continue to raise their take-home pay. This is a company that will plead poverty and say it has to put microtransactions into its games, and it has to keep letting go of hundreds of people at a time, and yet it will still manage to find a reported $20 million in bonuses to try and keep a single executive from leaving. It's often easy to overlook, usually because the amount is so big it becomes damn near abstract to normal people, but it's easy to overlook exactly how much money is flowing directly into the pockets of executives, while they wring their hands in public, lamenting the necessity of their layoffs. And we've mostly focused on recent stuff here. EA's been pulling stunts and nonsense forever. EA had microtransactions shoveled into Dead Space 3, for example, being among the first companies to embrace psychologically insidious microtransactions of the sort we recently discussed in a video as deliberately, malevolently addictive. Before microtransactions, EA was in the vanguard of companies experimenting with exactly how far it could take the notion of downloadable content, indulging in what was once called Day 1 DLC, but has now been so disappointingly normalized with things like season passes and inbuilt premium storefronts. The days when Day 1 DLC was a big issue. I miss that now. Under EA's leadership, a colourful, fun, light-hearted Insomniac game went from this to whatever tired, dated, humorless, focus-tested guff this is.
It's volatile, unpredictable, and when combined with other elements, shit gets really weird. It's what makes our weapons so...
EA loved the idea of the online pass as a used game countermeasure, even putting them in single-player games like Kingdoms of Amalur. EA fought tooth and nail to keep Sekiro in its games, even as credible criticism continued to mount up over the shady DRM. Pretty much any controversial corporate tactic, any anti-customer business model, any sleazy shenanigans that the so-called AAA game industry has conceived, Electronic Arts has jumped on board with gleefully and maliciously. Not mistakenly, but fully bloody purposefully. It's what EA does, it's what a corporation's fucking do. And in all that time, a dismaying number of people across games media have acted as their cheerleaders. Way back in 2012, IGN published a notorious article titled, "Why Do People Hate EA?" and sought the answer to that question by asking none other than EA itself. Not anyone who actually expressed criticism of EA, all of whom were written off as a minority who write mean things on the internet. No, it asked EA why people hate EA. and as a result published unchallenged propaganda from then company man Peter Moore, trotting out weak excuses like a corporation's primary concern is making money, which apparently justifies anything they do, or that it's just trying to figure things out in a changing market. The article even went so far as to hand-wave away the notorious EA Spouses debacle, one of the earliest controversies involving dangerously stressful crunch periods inflicted on overworked developers. At the time, EA was under fire for excessive crunch time, an issue one of its subsidiaries is still involved in due to the stories we now know about Anthem and the so-called stress casualties suffered by developers there. IGN's shrugging response at the time: "My guess is that EA is probably no worse a place to work than anywhere else. Probably better. If the focus of your hate is working conditions at EA, I want to gently suggest you also consider clothing factories in Southeast Asia, or diamond mines in Southern Africa, or fast food outlets in the Midwest." Ooh. Yikes and... ooh, friend, ooh. Not a great look even back then, let alone through the lens of the modern day where crunch in the game industry is finally being taken fucking seriously. Yeah, thanks for leading the charge on that conversation, by the way, guys. I bring this up because it's an ongoing problem. Just last week we looked at a Polygon-published defense of loot boxes, which I think years from now, just like with this IGN article, is gonna be a really bad look one day. It frustrates me when the lies, propaganda, and utter gibberish coming out of EA executives' mouths are reprinted without objection. Of course Peter Moore thought EA hatred was overblown. Of course Matt Bilby struggles with the idea of EA being seen as a bad guy. They're speaking for the self-interested fucking companies. It's like asking the mouth of Sauron why Mordor gets such a bad rap. And while there are some brilliant reporters out there shining a spotlight on some abuses in the game industry, far too much media just props the shit up and encourages it and helps it perpetuate. And it's not that I'm bitter about the fact that we did some reporting on the abuses going on at Rockstar that were completely fucking ignored by the game's press, but I am bitter about that, yes. EA doing one good thing does not make it a good guy. WWE takes part in a huge anti-bullying charity campaign every year. It also performs shows in Saudi Arabia for blood money and actively helps whitewash perception of the country's despotic regime. One good thing does not make up for what EA does. For what a fucking corporations are fucking a do.
Electronic Arts can struggle with the perception of being a bunch of bad guys all day long. They are a bunch of bad guys. Most AAA publishers are bad guys. And I say that wholeheartedly. I say that as someone who has spoken to gambling addicts, spoken to shopping addicts, spoken to the prey that these fucking game companies go after with their so-called surprise mechanics and their recurrent user spending. And while talking to these people doesn't make me an expert on the matter of addiction, it makes me a fucksite more of an expert than Electronic Arts itself, a company that has demonstrated zero interest in finding out just what a negative influence it has on people. Drink it. No, I don't want to. Drink it, miniature fantasy Willem Dafoe. No, no, avenge me. I'm done with the propaganda, with the cheerleading, with the apologia. Electronic Arts really can go fuck itself. And there have been articles out there have been spokespeople out there who have tried to discredit criticism of EA because people like to say fuck EA. But the thing is, I don't feel ashamed saying fuck EA. You can't shame me for saying it, because I believe it, because EA should go get fucked. So yes, fuck EA. Yes, EA is a bunch of bad guys. Yes, they're loot boxes, not surprise mechanics, and yes, they do have a detrimental, harmful effect. And yes, Electronic Arts has bought and killed studios as a routine, as part of its business model, because it's what companies do. And yes, companies overall are a bunch of bad guys because they wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, not unless you gave them $5 first. And you'd think $5 wouldn't be much to a corporation, but they would stab a baby for $1. But if there is one thing you can definitely all say, without reservation, without hesitation, you can all say, thank God for me.